Raptor Spank here, and today we have Metacheck June 1st. On to the new month and a new patch. And so we're not really going to talk about any decks here. I'm not going to give much of a meta update either because I've been kind of busy with the holiday this past weekend, so I didn't end up playing that many games. So meta update, not terribly worth it from that perspective, but also I figured kind of since we're going into a balance patch, might not really be worth that much anyways. That said, I haven't actually looked at the balance patch aside from another tweet by Legends of Runeterra with regards to a certain change in the balance patch, so I don't know what it displays, but I do know what it's supposed to be. But other than that, I haven't even seen the patch notes, so I just kind of assumed it was going to be at least some sort of semi-major change, but we'll see if that's actually the case. I have a feeling it's going to be a lot smaller than most people hope, but we'll see how it is. So basically this episode, just going to talk about the patches, so that's why you're seeing it on the screen. I'm just going to go through, give my takes, see what I think of it, see where we're going, that kind of thing, and that's just going to be this week's episode. So, let's start off right off the bat, the card updates, the big stuff we have been thinking about. Yep, people are always passionate about it. Yep, exactly. Ultimately, their goal is to make it as fun as possible. Yep, that's why they didn't do a balance patch last time. But generally speaking, they've been relatively good at that, so I can't give them too much crap for that. And they want to avoid collateral damage. Interesting. I mean, there's only so much you can do to prevent that, so, you know, I think that's a little bit like... You're a little crazy for for wanting that. She went from a 2/4 to a 3/5, and then a 3/5 to a 4/6. So they've just buffed Talia's stat lines. That's probably for the best. She kind of did need that, and they made Malphite easier to flip. That's also very necessary. So I talked about Talia Malphite at the announcement of this expansion. And it was the second deck I played. I think I played Cheerian Sumpworker first, and then I immediately after played Talia Malphite, and the deck was fun, but clearly outperformed by the competition. And one of the biggest problems is leveling up Malphite is so hard to do without building a terrible deck. Like, you have to put in all these really bad landmarks to get him to flip easily. So I'm not even sure that dropping it from 12 to 10 will be enough, but that's definitely a good and positive change, and Malphite definitely deserved it. And same with the Talia changes, too. I know Talia and Talia Malphite have been kind of trending up, Talia more than Malphite, but like there's the Talia Lysandra people were playing and all that, so she was trending up, but I think the stat line change is probably fair, so not too concerned about that, and that's the only changes for champions, so anyone wanting a Nasus nerf, you're out of luck. Blossoming Blade, upping it in cost, but also upping its base stats. That's totally fine. The base stats actually pretty irrelevant for the card, so I don't think it's actually going to be much of a buff either, because, I mean, it doesn't have any keywords to force its damage through. It doesn't have Overwhelm, it doesn't have Fearsome, it doesn't have an Elusive, so a 3/3 versus a 4/3 really only affects what you can block, so the biggest change that it makes here is that you can block a Nasus with it after it's flipped. But that's a pretty minimal advantage, but that is something. So there's that. The cost nerf is actually pretty huge. It's a pretty brutal nerf for the deck, but well deserved. Answers the question of whether Misfortune Aurelia is going to dodge nerfs. It did not, but I don't think it deserved to dodge nerfs. So yeah, Blossoming Blade. This seems fair. Up from there, Inspiring Marshal, this is the one. Okay, so it does say the correct thing here, it just doesn't there. So they upped the costs from 5 to 6, and they nerfed the base stats. Reasonable. They left it with the same effect. Honestly, the base stats, so a lot of people were talking about wanting its toughness to come down, and I was one of them. I also wanted it to go down to a 4/5 instead of a 4/6, but that's a very minimal nerf. It's still not going to be super effective or easy to remove. It's just slightly easier to remove. The cost nerf is what's really going to hurt here. Pushing it back another turn, much like Blossoming Blade, like this is really hurting its curve out, and it's just sort of like optimal running essentially is going to be a lot worse now. especially for Inspiring Martial, even more so than Blossoming Blade. But both are pretty steep nerfs, so I definitely expect Azir Aurelia to be hit pretty hard by these changes. And that's the only changes, so if you do hate playing against Thresh Nasus like I do, you're out of luck. Deck's still really, really good. It's still going to be really, really good going forward, and so the only nerfs really hit Azir Aurelia. I don't know why I even said really. The only nerfs were Azir Aurelia. They're good ones, at least. That I'm happy about. So there's a possibility that this will be enough to push Azir Aurelia out so that other decks that can poach on Thresh Nasus come in. We're going to really see how that goes. And then maybe that will make Thresh Nasus not as overwhelming, but very disappointed that one of the biggest decks out there right now they didn't even touch, despite the fact it's been around since Shurima dropped, and it's been a problem since Shurima dropped. But I like the changes to Talia Malphite. I like the changes to Azir Aurelia. As much as I'm sad to see the Blossoming Blade change that's going to affect Misfortune Aurelia, I think the deck is too strong, and I think those archetypes are just too fast with what they do, so slowing them down by increasing the mana cost is a very solid way to try and make that change, and I hope it works out, that it pushes the deck back a bit. There's been a couple of times they've been a little too cautious with nerfs in the past, but then there's also been plenty of times in the past where they did some slight change, and it was a hugely powerful change. Like Navori Conspirator, like Elusives, IF Elusives was really broken in beta, and all they did was lower it from a 3-2 to a 2-2, and it made all the difference. The deck was still playable, but it was no longer the best deck in the format, crushing everything else. So hopefully this is on that side of things. So we can hope anyways that makes things go smoothly. Then there's some lab changes. New starting champion added. Oh, right, the Malphite card pack. I forgot about that they mentioned. That you get that by playing labs. That's actually kind of cool. Having more ways to encourage people to play labs, probably a cool thing. I like labs, but there's not much reason to play it if you're trying to grind rank, that sort of thing. So that's pretty cool. Changes to Lab of Legends, I should say. Yeah, Talia's deck has been updated. Good. Her deck was absolute trash, so hopefully that's better. I'm not a huge fan of this Duo Q lab anyways. It's just not that interesting to me, but, you know. Cross-Shard Friend Challenge will no longer be supported. I heard it was glitchy, but I've never tried it, so interesting. And then some bug fixes. Yeah, so that is the patch. Disappointing, I would definitely say. Because I personally wanted Thresh Nasus nerfs. I'm not pissed about it. I'm not like super angry about it, as has been the case in some patches where they just really were completely lost. Because at least they finally did something about Azir Aurelia, and Azir Aurelia is a problem. It's definitely a deck that's not healthy for the game, and it pushes out a lot of archetypes that would be more fun to play and better to play. So definitely the nerfs to Azir Aurelia are really sweet. Hopefully, I'm just hoping, knock on wood, that nerfing Azir Aurelia allows some other deck to appear that does well against Thresh Nasus, because I absolutely hate Thresh Nasus, and they didn't touch it at all. And it's honestly, I think, better than it was before the Blighted Caretaker nerfs. Like, I think that version of the deck was worse than the one we have now, so I actually think that the deck is a bigger problem now than it was then, and they're not nerfing it, which is concerning, to say the least. I thought those two decks were the shoo-ins for nerfs, because like every other game you play, you're against one of those two decks. So I was hoping for it. We didn't see it. Hopefully the meta just shifts enough on its own with this that we can get some of the slower decks out here that might have a better odds. I mean, if Talia Malphite works, like, this deck could be decent against Thresh Nasus because of the fact you could have Hush. And definitely Hush is very effective against Nasus. Although if he can level up, he gets that spell shield, and then it's a lot harder to make it work. But the key is to kill him before he levels up by using Hush. So if this deck works, then maybe that's a deck that can kind of push Thresh Nasus back a bit. We'll see for sure. I'm not sure this is enough to make Talia Malphite good, but the nerf to Azir is also a buff to Talia Malphite, so definitely something that's going to be worth trying at the very least. But yeah, little disappointed in the patch, but at least they were we're heading in the right direction. It just might not be enough, but it was good nerfs. I will say that it was good nerfs, good buffs. All happy about that at least. So, if you enjoyed the video, leave a like, comment below, and subscribe for more Legends of Runeterra content.